Grateful to have them presenting to us today about the current job market and how to get a job in libraries. So I will leave you both to introduce yourselves and have at it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us today. My name is Christine Schonhart. I'm currently the director of the Gleason Public Library in Carlisle, Massachusetts. I've been there for about 5 months, and before that, for about 8 years, I was the director of the 24 branch libraries for the Boston Public Library.
And I'm Sara Slymon, and I'm the director for the Public Libraries of Brookline. I've been there almost 2 years. Prior to that, I was the director in Randolph, Mass. At the Turner Free Library, the assistant director in Braintree at their Free Library, and then I also did about 10 years in Boston before that.
So having recently just gone through a job search, I know what you'll all be going through soon. So we presented this at Mass Library Association and also at the New England Library Association last fall. And we're going to try to talk for maybe 30 minutes and then give time for you guys to ask questions, because we found that was really the part of the presentation that people engaged with most. We have sort of broken this up into different areas. We're going to start off talking about, like, as hiring managers, what we look for in resumes and cover letters. And I'll just preface this by saying we are not the be-all, end-all. This is our opinions based on our years of being hiring managers. Everyone's going to be a little different, so we just wanted to present sort of what we've been experiencing and what we look for when we're hiring. But don't take anything as written in stone. There's a lot of different ways to do things, but we can talk a little bit about our experience. So as I said, I just did a job search myself, and it's really difficult when you are putting a lot of resumes out there, and it's a lot of common sense that we're going to talk about. And the first thing I just want to remind everyone is to really make the employer feel like they're the only person that you're applying to. So don't write the wrong name of the library. Don't save your cover letter and resume with another library's name and send it to them. Always personalize it. Find out something about that library that you can include in the cover letter, whether you looked through their strategic plan and something really struck you that you're interested in. Say they're really, one of their goals is outreach, and outreach is something you're really interested in. Put something in your cover letter about how you can help them reach that goal, because what they're looking for is the right fit for the job. And if you can demonstrate that you will help them meet their goals, that's one extra point for you that someone else may not be personalizing. So it seems obvious, but do your research and try to tailor your resume and cover letter to the job you are applying for.
So literally print out the job posting. Circle 10 or 12 action words in it and make sure those are in your cover letter, and probably your resume as well if you can get them in there. So if they say, even if it's boilerplate language, if they say they're looking for a dynamic leader, you want to say, I am a dynamic leader. Here is an example of my dynamic leadership, something like that. You want to absolutely reflect back to them that, like Christine said, that you're thinking of them and what you can do for them, and that you've heard them loud and clear, and that you're capable of following sort of instructions that, you know, they've said, this is what I want, and you're saying, and this is what I have, and that's a match. And that people do literally go through cover letters and circle the words that they know that they're looking for, that you have put in because you carefully read the posting. And that gets you put in the yes pile instead of in the no pile.
And in this day and age, too, with some human resources departments using technology to vet in, resumes, there may be a program that's looking for those words, and if you don't have them in there, that resume may not even get to the hiring manager. It may sort of get shot out because 10 other resumes had those words.
Yeah.
And, you know, the bigger organizations are trying to get through sometimes 100, 200 resumes really quickly. And so they use that software to.
And I think that raises a really important point that I certainly didn't know when I was young and starting out. And my very first job as a professional librarian was at the Boston Public Library. So you can imagine the size of the machinery there, right? And how many people came in and applied. I see, Christine and I both have seen a lot online in librarian forums, people complaining about how rude it is, that people never got back to them, and my resume just went out into the ether, and the least that they could have done is acknowledge me. And this is a resounding complaint. I see it almost every day. And the fact is that you really need to understand is that, so Christine and I as directors, we might never even see your resume. It might go to HR, and HR deems it not worthy of review for whatever reason, hopefully, a legitimate one, not a capricious one, and we might never see it. Furthermore, even if we do see it, sometimes towns and cities have policies that you're not allowed to reply, you're not allowed to acknowledge receipt of things. So I just want to sort of put that out there as a way to sort of cushion the blow as you start putting resumes out. Some people will write you lovely handwritten notes saying, thank you, I received your resume, and we anticipate selecting a batch of candidates in the next 2 weeks. Thank you so much for your time. And some people, like I said, it'll go into the ether and you'll never ever hear from them. You have to work really hard, especially if it happens a lot, not to take that as a personal slight. Some places just have, like I said, a big machinery, and that the people never even see your application.
And if you're curious about something, say you're looking at a job posting and there's something in there that you don't understand or you're curious about, I always say it's completely okay to call up the library and say, I'm interested in this job. Can you tell me a little bit more about this project you're working on? It's not illegal. Yeah. So, I mean, you're a patron just like anyone else, and you're curious about something that they have going on, and it will give you that extra step if you get to the interview to say, I spoke to a really great person at your organization about this project. It shows that you've gone an extra mile. In my last job search, it was for a director, and they didn't have their budget information posted anywhere, and I thought that was really strange. So I just called them up and talked to the director, and the current director who was retiring, and I said, I'm applying for your job. Can you send me your budget? And he said, what a great question. Nobody else has asked that. And so when I went to my interview, the trustees said, we heard from the current director that you called up and asked for the budget. We thought that was really great. So, he passed that information on. So it's never a bad thing to call up and just say, tell me about this project you're working on, so that you've got the information. You've got one up on everyone else applying. Mm-hmm. It's a really, as you probably know, it's a tough job market, and especially in the information field, you've got people not only in library science programs, but informatics programs and computer science, all vying for some of the same jobs. So anything you can do to stand out is really what you need to do. And I think Amy Ryan, who was my former boss at the Boston Public Library, has office hours here to help people. She'll look over people's resume, and I really encourage you to take advantage of her because to have someone at the level that she's been at for years to really look over your resume, and she'll give you honest feedback and say, you need to sparkle in this resume, and she's really great at it. So if you can take advantage of her office hours here.
Yeah, and I mean, if not Amy, somebody.
Yep.
Okay, we all make typos. We all cut and paste our cover letters and forget to take the previous, addressee's salutation out. But that's a deal breaker in a market that's competitive. If you apply for a job with me and it's, dear Mr. Johnson, I really want to be a medical tech, that's going right in the garbage. So you may have multiple skill sets, amongst them medical technology and librarianship, and that's fine. But if you literally can't even take the time to not only review your own papers, but have somebody else review them, then that's not going to get you in the go pile. Christine and I have been friends for a really long time. We've been through a lot of job searches together, and we still look at each other's stuff all the time. Every time we send something, we look at each other's stuff, and we have a couple other people we send it to too, and we inevitably find mistakes in each other's papers, but we also find places, like Christine said, where I'll be like, wait, you forgot all about that amazing project that you did last year, or don't talk about that because that didn't work out that well in the long run through no fault of yours, right. So it's really, really important to have people review for you because they're going to be able to help you remember things that are great about yourself. I mean, librarians tend not to be braggy, so it's hard. This cover letter part can be really hard for some people, but this is your job winner, the cover letter. Yeah. It really is, much more so than your resume.
And we've said this in other presentations, if you're applying online a lot of times, and you don't see a place to put your cover letter, save your cover letter and resume as a PDF and submit it all together. It's so much better to get a cover letter than to not, and then say, well, I didn't really know how to submit it. So I use cover letters as well as a writing sample. So your cover letter serves both as an opportunity to brag about yourself and some projects you've done and really talk about the impact. Your resume is really there for listing your jobs and your chronology and your education, and your cover letter is really there to show your impact. And if you need to be a good writer in the job, that's a great way to show that as well. So I always save it as a PDF and upload it all at once, so that.
And I would go one step further and say save everything always as a PDF and just send it that way. I can't tell you how many, with all the open source software and Microsoft products and Apple products and funky, Google Forms and other kinds of forms, you work so hard on those cover letters and on those resumes. You don't want them to come through looking like a spaghetti mess, and they do sometimes. And even though I wouldn't necessarily blame you and be like, oh, I can see when it's a mistake that the computer made and not a mistake that you made. It's still super frustrating to try to read your resume when there's, ampersands and, dollar signs and quotation marks all sprinkled through it. So that is going to make me feel frustrated while I'm thinking about you. And then I've now equated frustration with you, and that's not a road you want to go down before I've even met you. So that's what we usually recommend, trying to save all things as PDFs. Just sort of as a wrap-up to cover letters and a lead into resumes. So this isn't necessarily the best place to let your actual personality shine. I don't know how to put it exactly, but monograms, colored ink, funny fonts. Even if you want to be a children's librarian and you think that might be really appealing to have it look I can relate to children. No, it's not a good idea. You should try to keep it professional. This is a professional document. This is not a document that you are selling, that you're quirky and fun. This is you showing an institution whose business it is to get work done, that you can get that work done. Later, once you have the job and everybody sees what an amazing skill set you have, you can start using fun fonts and colors and stuff. Mm-hmm. But try to keep it as classic and business-like as possible in your papers. I saw a resume that was submitted entirely in GIFs, and you know what? She got a job. She got an awesome job. She's super happy. They're super happy with her. And if that's what you need to be super happy, then go ahead and make your resume entirely out of GIFs. There is someone for everyone out there. However, if what you really need is an entry-level job because you just got out of library school and you have a ton of bills to pay, not the time to, super showcase your sparkling individuality. So not to say you don't get to be yourself later. Everybody makes different decisions about that, but this is a business transaction at this point. So you want to make sure you're keeping it business-like. It's not going to make you stand out in a positive way.
Right.
I tell the pancake story.
I always tell this pancake story. So it was we're transitioning into resumes, and so one time I was hiring for a job that wasn't a librarian job, but it was more of a creative job. So I was expecting some more creative resumes, but this one person had a resume that was normal, and then on the side it was sort of their interest. And the person went on for 2 paragraphs about how much they loved pancakes and exclamation points and pancakes, and I just thought, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. This person now, I can't remember a thing about their skills. All I can remember is they really like pancakes. And so I was like, this is not going to be the right fit for this job because they're quirkier than this job requires. So I still couldn't tell you the person's name, but I always tell the story about this person who really loved pancakes. So that if you stand out in a bad way, it's not great. And really your resume, depending on where you are in your career, you don't have to put every single job you've ever had. So for instance with me, I'm now at a point in my career where I'm only applying for management jobs. I have dropped off everything that isn't a management job, and I just put one sentence under other experience. I was a children's librarian and a reference librarian and telephone reference, and I put it all just one quick thing, and then I focused my resume on the job that I want, which is in management. So there's lots of different ways to do it. There's chronological, there's by skill set. People go back and forth on whether an objective statement is needed. You can do that in a number of ways. What I would recommend is really finding another resume that you think is really good and just copy that format. I completely got rid of an objective statement, and instead now I use I call it an executive summary. I want people to see the word executive if I'm going for a director job. So it's pretty much the same thing, although everyone knows your objective is to get a job, and a challenging job, and where I can showcase my skills. That doesn't really tell me much. If you say, I'm a proven leader with 15 years experience with collections, children's, everything like that, that tells me more about what you've been doing than I would like to get a job where I can showcase my skills, because I know that's what you want to do.
Again, like Christine said when we started, this is just our advice based on our experience. But, to me, I like the executive summary, but if you're just starting out, the objective statement's just taking up real estate, because that should be in your resume. Like she said, we all know you want to get a job working as a medical technician in my library, but it should be in your cover letter. It's not really necessary, and again, it's taking up valuable real estate where you could showcase other skills. And I can't emphasize enough what Christine said about dropping old jobs off. And it's hard, you guys, especially as you get older. It was hard for me to drop that job where I was an aide to a U.S. Senator off, but it has nothing to do with my life now. He's not even alive anymore. But it killed me because I was so proud of it. But it was also before all of you were born. So nobody cares anymore. Really, I know when I was getting started, I had paid for college working a lot of food service and a lot of retail, like everyone else in the world, right? So how did I make that work for getting a library job? So you pull out the essence of those skills. So if you need to, if you've been waiting tables at Bertucci's for the last 5 years to pay the bills, you can use that in your resume, highlighting the skills that are transferable to library work. Front-facing customer service, dealing with challenging patrons, managing money, doing money transactions, conflict resolution, things like that. Resumes, you'll see everything from it can't be longer than 1 page to it should be 20 pages to, it should have a monogram, it shouldn't have a monogram. You have to kind of do what you're comfortable with. Public, special, and academic all have different requirements. Our specialty is public. I really don't like to see anything longer than about 1.5 pages or 2 pages. The rest, really, it should be just a list so I know that you have the qualifications. That being said, let's go back to the beginning of the talk where we talked about the great scanning machine, right? You need to go through that job posting and make sure that you have every single qualification on there. And if you don't, back into your cover letter, why I'm qualified for this job. Although it may seem I don't have direct experience with front-facing customer service, I'd like to tell you about my 9 summers as a camp counselor. So it's, it's a tricky bit of business, but you really want to make sure that everything in that posting gets back into your paperwork so that they can't look at your papers and say, well, they don't do this. I've had people apply for jobs with me that say very clearly in the qualifications you have to have an MLS, and they've put right in their cover letter why I should give them the job even though they don't have an MLS. And some of them have gotten interviews. So.
And we're very lucky in this day and age. We have a great resource in the internet and places like LinkedIn, which I really fought for years. I said, why do I have to have a LinkedIn account? I don't want a LinkedIn account. But networking is tremendously important. I was just reading a Harvard Business Review article, and it happened to be about the UK, but I thought, think about the size of the UK and multiply that by the size of the US. And it said something like 1/3 of jobs in the UK are hired through what's called the hidden system, which is the job may be posted publicly and it's all transparent, but it's based on networking and somebody knows someone and they already have someone in mind for the job. So you have to think about those things too. So if you can get on LinkedIn, I use LinkedIn as a professional tool, and anybody who asks to link to me, if they're in the library field, I say yes, because who knows, at some point I may need to call them up and say, I'm looking for a job at your organization, what can you tell me? And it's also a great way to see how, because a lot of people just sort of post their resume on LinkedIn, so you can see what people at that organization, how they're talking about their organization, how their resume looks. So it's a great tool that really we didn't have available to us years ago, so I fought it for years, but now I see why it's helpful, and really I can't say enough how much networking is a must.
And start now. Start with your classmates. I still work professionally with people I went to library school with in the early 90s. Like, there's 2 library directors in Massachusetts that I went to school with in New Jersey 20-some years ago. So it's never too soon to start. Keep those relationships up. It's so much easier now with the internet. And I say all the time, like, I would have killed to have access to the level of professionals that you can get on Facebook, on ALA Think Tank. There's people on there with 20 years experience, 10 years experience, 5 years experience doing exactly what you've dreamed of doing your whole life, who would be happy to talk to you, who would happily accept your friend request and become a mentor or a friend or just a casual advice giver. There's so much value in that. And you really don't know. The library world is very, very small. Very small. And not just in Massachusetts, nationally. So you want to make sure that you're capitalizing on that as best you can, because you will hear about jobs that are coming that haven't posted yet. Mm-hmm. So then you can start doing your homework before other people even know about them.
Yeah, we do this all the time.
All the time.
We know, it's interesting, it's so important to stay connected. So we sort of know who in the library world is looking to change jobs, looking for a job. And when we're at a meeting and we hear 3 people announce their retirement, we call each other up right away and say, who do you know that might be interested in this job or this job? And, let them know it's coming up. And so we do a lot of that, actually.
Yeah.
We're also big into mentoring. We'll be doing a talk on mentoring at MLA this year. So start now. Even the student groups that you're in now, you guys will be your cohort probably for the rest of your professional lives. So it's really important.
And I don't have any of you called me and had me? Yeah, see, there's one. And I've got a lovely young lady that works for me here, and a friend who got me to come here today.
Yes.
So, that's 3 people just in this room, right? So, I was pretty friendly, right? Right. So, awesome. So, you'd be surprised. People want to help. We're librarians, you guys. It's our whole mission in life is to help. So, don't be afraid to go see a library director, go see a children's librarian, go see a teen librarian. And say, I think I want to be a teen librarian. Is there anything, do you have, time to get coffee? Could I sit in your room with you for a couple hours this semester? People want to help each other. And then all of a sudden, Robin Brenner, right? And you get to be like, well, I worked in Robin Brenner's teen room. And then people go, oh, my God, Robin Brenner. I've known her for 10 years. She's amazing. People want to help you. I have tons of folks that are directors now that I've mentored participate in, I don't even know what they call them, but social events for the school, participate in even if you aren't interested in going into management and leadership, go participate in NELS. Sign up to go to the MLA, ALA, meet people from around the country. This is how you're going to find a job, because somebody out there is going to say, I met that awesome dude at ALA, and he said he wanted to move to Santa Clara, and now there's this great teen librarian job, and I'm going to give him a call. So we kind of got away from resumes.
Yeah. We can rep resume. I'm trying to be mindful of time as
Oh,
well.
right,
We can move into interviews.
Yeah.
So interviews, the most daunting part after you've finished the resume and spent all that time, you get the interview and now you're nervous, and but you want to present your best self. And it's hard, but once you get through a few of them, you'll start getting more comfortable. It's really interesting to help you feel better about the interview. Obviously do some research on the company, the institution, and try to find out what their culture is. And organizational culture is an extremely difficult thing to tap. And you may have to ask people, I'm coming for an interview. What's the dress code like there? You always want to dress a couple notches up than what you think. But if you were going to a tech startup in Silicon Valley and you walked in a 3-piece suit, they might be like, well, this guy's not going to fit in with us. We wear hoodies and jeans, And on the other side, if you show up in cutoff shorts and a stained-up T-shirt going to the Boston Public Library, they're probably going to say, well, that's really not what we're looking for either. So the greatest thing we've done, and I'm sure you guys do it too, is we do sort of secret shopper. We go to the library we are interested in working at, and we bring our laptop and we pretend we're a patron for a day, and we sit there and we watch what people are doing, and we look at what people are wearing, and I go up and I ask a reference question. I go up and I ask someone to help me find a book, and I look to see if they actually get up or if they say it's over there.
Yeah. Use the bathroom.
Yeah, is the bathroom clean?
I didn't take a director job once because the bathrooms were in a state of complete neglect. And what that said to me is that either the director didn't care or they had a serious custodian union problem, and I didn't want to work in a place that either of those things was true. So it sounds really silly, but interviews, you're interviewing them too. So I call them my super secret spy missions. I went to Brookline 8 times. And no one knew who I was because I don't know how they didn't figure it out, but I was there all the time. But don't forget, I think there's a couple of things on this. So my hugest pet peeve about interviews, you're going to find yourself in the no pile for me so quickly if you don't have a half a dozen questions for me at the end of the interview. If I say to you, do you have any questions for us? And you go, no thanks. I'm like, oh, okay. So if you don't demonstrate that you care enough about the institution and want to know more about it, when you haven't even had an opportunity to learn anything about it, like you're sitting with the hiring agent for that institution, and you can ask them anything. Even if it's not a job you really want, like this is a learning experience for the rest of your life, right? So
even
that's
if it's
huge.
Asking them what the organizational culture is,
Yeah.
like you can.
Why do you like coming here every day?
Yeah.
What don't you like about coming here? It can be anything. You should practice.
Mm-hmm.
You're always going to get asked some version of what is your weakness, so be ready to answer that. Do not make it a super suck-up answer of like, sometimes I work too hard. Because we can see through that.
Yeah.
But they're going to ask you, and use it. Tell a story. Say, I used to micromanage. I had a really hard time letting go of control of my projects, and I've worked really hard on it, but I'm still not perfect, and it's something I'm constantly growing at. Boom. It's like a perfect answer. Mm-hmm. Something that you acknowledge about yourself, that you're able to see about yourself that isn't perfect, that you are working on it, that you recognize that sometimes, you do better than other times. That it's like that's like a manager's happy answer. Don't forget, we really want you to work out. We don't want to have to do 10 more rounds of interviews. We don't want to have the job post again. So it's really easy to be like, feel really scared and judged and stuff when you're going into an interview, but we called you because you did all the other stuff we talked about so well that we think you have a huge potential to be part of our team. So know that walking in the door. We want you to like us too. We want you to want to work for us. We want this to work out. We want you to walk out the door, and when that door shuts, have everyone at the table look around and go, wow, they were great.
You've got probably 90 seconds to make that first impression. Yeah. You may think you've got the whole interview, but it's not. None of us like to hear this either, but we're all judged within our first 90 seconds. So if you come scrambling in the room late and you've got 5 bags and I can't find that thing I was looking for, you've made the impression right away that you're not organized, you're not on time.
Easily flustered.
So get to the interview early. Get relaxed, do some deep breaths, get everything you need so that you can walk into that room confident with your head up. Very nice to meet you, a strong handshake, look people in the eye. I say this because it's a mistake I made early on. Get people's names, and if you miss their name, ask them again. I'm sorry I missed your name. Can you remind me what it is? Write it down so that when you're answering the questions, oh, thank you, Sarah, that was a really great question. You can demonstrate that you're paying attention, because what I did once is I called someone Brenda through the interview and her name was Barbara. And then I got home and it hit me. I'm like, I think her name was Barbara, and I looked on the website and it was. Luckily they called me back and I apologized profusely and she had a good sense of humor about it, but it didn't make me, afterwards I fretted about that for a day until they called me, like I called her Brenda and her name. So I learned, like, I make a map on my piece of paper where everyone's sitting and I write their name.
I do too.
And then I try to look them in the eye when they ask the question and use their name. So it sounds really silly, but it's little things. And I also wanted to just say, I read a lot of Harvard Business Review. I really think that their writers are spot on, and they have an entire section on job search. And I was really glad to see a couple articles that mention this, because it's a tough subject to talk about. But one quote I read was, never wear something that's more interesting than what you have to say, because the person will only be looking at what you're wearing or like some crazy thing you've got going on. And I know we're all unique and we all want to present our unique selves, but sometimes the job interview is not the place for that. And so that's part of organizational culture and organizational fit. If you really want to be the person who's got 15 different colors of hair and nose rings and tattoos, and you're wearing like whatever you want to wear, that is great, but you've got to find the place that's going to accept that, and not every place is going to accept that, and it's hard to hear. That feels very judgy, and it is, but you've got to understand some organizations just don't want to deal with what goes along with that. People are going to ask you a lot of questions about that. People are going to see that before they see what you have to offer. And so there are places that are going to be a perfect fit for that, and it's going to be a fun place to work, but not all places are going to be like that. So sometimes you do have to sort of tone down some personal style. But if you don't want to, that is perfectly fine. Don't take a job that would make you do that. I like to put that out there because no one ever told me that. And I, as a young person, I thought I can wear whatever I want to wear, and nobody can tell. But then it's like, well.
And honestly, I did wear whatever I wanted to wear, and nobody told me otherwise. And I spent my whole day having people go, "Can I talk to a real librarian?" And that gets really tiring. And I finally was like, "It's me. It's not them. It's me." Like, I don't. To them, for whatever reason, I am not coming across as a seasoned professional. So I kept my weekend clothes for the weekend and started dressing a little more like a librarian during the week. So references, and then we have thank yous, and then we're going to tell you some mistakes that we've made, and a couple little miscellaneous pieces of advice, and then we have a fun thing that we're adding that we've never done before, and then we'll shut up. So references, you guys call your references before you put them down. You would not believe how many times I've picked up the phone and people have been like, "Hey, Susie Q said I could call you for a reference." And I'm like, "Wow, really? I haven't worked with her in 12 years and I haven't heard from her since." And I will say that. So I'm not going to do a reference for you just because you worked for me for 6 months 12 years ago. Do not risk it. You could do everything right. Your references should be written, designed by you. This is something that you have total control over. So you call your 3 people that you want to use as references. You tell them, "I'm about to graduate from Simmons. I would like to be, the digital librarian for Harvard. I'm going to start applying to, high-end academic libraries to get a digital librarian position. Would you be willing to be my reference? These are the kinds of things that I'm good at. Would you be willing to say that I am good at those things?" And if they say no, look what you did. You just saved yourself a bad reference.
And you can then ask them,
why,
and what can I do to improve that? And it's also a great way to get an answer for what are my weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
If you can ask your reference, what do you think my weaknesses are? You've just answered, they've just given you the answer for the question when the interview asked it, and then that's something you work on. So I always send my references the job posting and my resume as well, so that they can pick out. And sometimes I do all the work for them and circle the words. I want them to say, Christine is a dynamic leader, and these are the impacts. You know, if they're using the word impact, I want my reference to use the word impact. And I coach them, but this goes back to that mentoring and the networking. I've stayed in touch with everyone who's my reference by checking in every 3 or 4 months.
Having coffee,
drinks, going to dinner.
Lunch.
Because they have to know what you're doing. I have a reference who I haven't worked with in 8 years. She's very well respected in the Massachusetts libraries, but she hasn't supervised me in 8 years. She has no idea what I've been doing, except I meet with her every 4 months and tell her what I'm doing and bring her things and show her so she can talk about that.
So then you want to call them after your interview. So when they've said, hey, we'd like your 3 references, you call those 3 references and you say, I just want to let you know, I had my interview at MIT. It went pretty well. They asked for your name. They're going to be calling. I anticipate it being one of your questions in the interview should always be, what do you think your time frame is? Just like tattoo that on your hand and then cover it up so they can't see that you have a hand tattoo. No. Because you will walk out of that interview and kick yourself every time when you're like, I didn't ask and now I have no idea. And then it's like, if they say they don't know, that tells you something about that organization that you should know. If they say, Harvard, I'm talking to you, 8 to 12 months, that might not be a good fit for you. Someone who can't make a decision about a hire in 8 to 12 months because their bureaucracy is so heavy, that might not be a good fit for you. But if they're able to say, you'll know by Friday, then you can pick up the phone and call your references and say, I had my interview today. It went pretty well. They asked for references. They said they're going to be making a decision by Friday, so I anticipate them calling you sometime this week. I just want to let you know I feel like I really botched the what are your strengths question. So if they ask you about what my strengths are, what I should have said is this, and what I did say is that, and if you could help me with that at all, that would be great. And so that leads into a little bit into thank you notes, which are super, super, super important. I had 2 candidates recently who were equal in literally every way. They were both completely amazing. And one of them, without fail, it was a senior executive position, through the entire lengthy, multiple interview process, routinely sent me and all of the members of the hiring team quick thank you notes, but increasing in awesomeness as he got closer and closer to getting the job, while the other candidate never once acknowledged our time, our effort, enjoying the interview, being glad to have been there, nothing. We never heard from her. And literally, she got another job, so we didn't have to do this, but that's what it would have come down to in the end. That he wrote really nice thank you notes, and she was just like, what else?
And a lot of people ask, is an email thank you okay? And I think if they're saying we're making a decision by Friday and it's Wednesday and your thank you note's not going to get there till Monday or Tuesday, I think a quick thank you email is fine, but I would always follow it up with the written. It seems generational, but it's sort of timeless. And nice. I laughed at my mom who made me write thank you notes my whole life, but now I see that it really does make people, you get it and you're like, well, that took some time, and it's also a great opportunity if you flubbed something. Thank you so much. I just wanted to, let you know more about my strengths. You can add something in your thank you note that you may not get. And I have to say, when I got the job at Carlisle, they had a lot of applicants, and 3 or 4 of us wrote thank you notes, and the trustees still talk about the people who sent them thank you notes. So it made an impression on them. It was like they had a tough choice between the people who actually sent the thank you notes. And so if I hadn't done that, I probably wouldn't, who knows, but maybe I wouldn't have been one of the finalists for that job because someone else took the extra time. It takes 5 minutes, and it seems old-fashioned, but throw a stamp on it and put it in the mail. Have it done while you're in the interview, and then you can like write something really quick if you need to add anything, and drop it in the mail when you're walking out of the building via mailbox or something. And Fru could just raise your hand.
I also think that you indicate to the interview how you might behave with partners and outside agencies that you're dealing with before you get that job.
That's important.
They already can have a sense of trust that this person has a certain level of decorum, and you would trust them. You wouldn't have to tell them to get this right. Because I think that.
I just have two quick, common mistakes. One, and I've done this, which is why I'm bringing it up, but people do it all the time. Follow the instructions. If it says email your resume and we'll call you, email your resume and let us call you. I recently had someone, it was email your papers to HR. Well, he emailed his papers to HR, then he emailed them to me, then he also emailed them to my assistant director and my assistant in case I didn't get the emails, which he put return receipt requests on. Then he came in uninvited and unannounced to my office and walked right past my assistant and handed me his papers as I was walking out the door to a meeting. Then he called me the next day to apologize for calling me for spelling my name wrong. And then he called me again to apologize for bothering me. Okay, right? So that's an extreme example, but don't, people say different things about this. I don't have time to talk. Sometimes I get over 100 applicants. One job I posted a couple years ago, I got 147 applicants. Do not have time to just have a quick chat with 147 people who've dropped by my office to say, hey, did you get my resume? So please don't do that. Unless it says, hand deliver your packet. Didn't we recently just see a job that said that we were like, is that really what that says? Also, and this is actually from, we have a third colleague who we love who does this presentation with us usually, and she couldn't make it tonight, but this is one that she came up with, and I'm going to pour one out for Jen here. Name dropping, be careful. So all that stuff we were saying about networking, so just because I really like Christine doesn't necessarily mean that Joe Schmo at Library X really likes Christine, who he worked with 10 years ago. So maybe my interview where I don't even know this guy isn't the best time to be like, oh my God, Christine and I have worked together forever. We present at conferences and we hang out and it's awesome, because he might be like, oh, I hate Christine. So then you've hurt yourself. So that's not the time. The time is later. Unless you are 100 million % sure that you're doing something to your own, that's going to be an advantage to you, I would not recommend name dropping during interviews. And please, God, never, ever do the nepotistic name dropping. Please do not ever finish up an interview by being like, of course you've heard of my uncle, the selectman. That's you've just killed me. I can't hire you because you've literally done something almost illegal. So, or asked me to, do something illegal. So, don't do that.
I already dropped my issues in where I called someone the wrong name, and I have once. I was applying for a job somewhere, and I saved the file with a different library name. And I don't know if they really noticed it. I would imagine they did, because I would notice that. But it's things you realize afterwards, and you're like, why did I do that? But it's because you're rushing through, so it's really, you've got to take the time. You got to spell everyone's name right. Nobody likes, Sarah does not have an H on the end of her name. My name's not Christina, despite everybody trying to call me Christina.
Yep.
I don't know where people want to throw an A on the end of this name. It starts with a C, not a K.
Yep.
So it's really, it just shows, it's not that I'm like, oh, why can't this person get my name right? It just shows that you've taken the time to really make sure all your I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So,
all right, so we're going to tell you guys some jobs just to cheer you all up in your job search. We're going to go back and forth and tell you jobs that we took when we already had our MLSs. You ready? Okay, I was a bike messenger in New York City.
I worked in the gift shop of the Minneapolis Institute of Arts, part-time.
I was a grocery checker at Whole Foods.
What else did I do? I feel like I worked somewhere else. I worked for the Canadian government for a while.
I was a file clerk for a diamond company in the Diamond District of New York City.
I was a file clerk in Plymouth, Minnesota.
I inventoried wholesale like department store jewelry. So don't get too discouraged.
Yeah.
I got run over by a bus with an MLS, so you guys can do it.
Yeah. I took a lot of part-time library jobs that were like from 5 to midnight, and you know,
I was
jobs that nobody else.
I was an after-hours bartender.
Yeah. So
I waited tables.
Yeah.
So
there are jobs out there. Sometimes you have to piece a few of them together until the right one comes along, but all of that is great experience.
Your turn.
We've left time for questions. We covered a lot. Yeah.
So, related to the whole knocking stuff off your resume if it's not pertinent, I know that I've been told in the past that there's like a certain number of years that you should be going back. Like, what is general, like, what would you guys recommend?
I wouldn't agree with that as a statement. I would say, I mean, I might put that job as an aide to a senator right back on my resume if I decided I wanted to work at, like, the state library on you know, the hill down there. I think you really just have to look at what you've done and pick what's relevant. That being said, I'm 46. I'm not going to put all my jobs in high school on there, no matter how relevant they are to my, you know, current situation.
I think it's an opportunity to look at maybe a different style of resume. If chronological is not what is going to work out for you there, maybe you do it a skills-based resume, and if you say, you look at what skills are like customer service, and maybe you did waitressing, bank teller, something, put that under your customer service skill if they're looking for technology. So maybe it's an opportunity just to try out a different style of resume, because you still want to get those points across that that's very important skill related to the job, but maybe it happened 10 years ago. You don't necessarily, by the way, have to put what year it was. I know some people go back and forth on that, but I mean, to me, if you were a great customer service representative in 1999, that's still relevant.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter what year.
You guys mentioned some different states, so I was wondering if you could give any advice for job searching in a different state than the one you're in now.
Yes, I did it a lot. So I grew up in Buffalo, moved to Boston, moved to Minnesota, moved to New York City, and now back to Boston. So I've gone all over. It's difficult because you're up against a lot of people who live there already. If you can include something in your cover letter about why you're relocating, that might help. It's just, I don't know the answer to that really. I was very lucky. I had to wait actually till I relocated to Minnesota, and it took me a good 9 months to get a job, which is why I worked part-time at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts in the gift shop part-time, until I was there, able to go on interviews at a drop of a hat. But then when I was there and wanted to move to New York City, the New York Public Library happened to be just doing a massive hiring at the time. So they were putting their feelers out nationwide. And, you know, I put in my resume, I'm relocating as of July 1st, even though I wasn't really sure if I was. But it showed that I was serious about it. And I did a couple phone interviews, and they really asked, like, why are you moving? And, you know, I got to actually talk about it. But, you know, some people say find someone local and put their address on. I don't know if that really works. You're really just trying to show your skills, not that you just live somewhere. So I don't know if I have a great answer for that, but
well, I think how you led is really important. That remember that as hiring agents, there are a lot of questions we're legally prohibited from asking you. So if you have a reason that you're moving that falls into that class of questions, and you want us to know that. So I had a candidate recently who was from New England, her husband, and she had moved out to the Midwest to take care of an ailing parent who had subsequently passed away, and they wanted to come home. And none of that, obviously, is going to be something I can ask about in the interview. And she didn't tell me all of that in her cover letter, but what she did say is that, you know, she and her husband were embarking on simultaneous job searches so that they could move home. So to me, that demonstrated investment, that they're both looking, that they're very serious about it, and that this is home. So to me, that was like, oh, well, they want to come home, you know. So that's a serious investment. These guys aren't just like flinging resumes out to wherever. So do what you can with your cover letter to let people know why within your comfort zone about, personal things. And of course, you don't want to get like super personal, because then people are going to be like, ooh, can't separate their personal life from their work life. But give people as much as you can to express to them why you're serious. I mean, something as simple as, it's been my lifelong dream to live in New York City, and I wanted to, finish my education close to home and then embark on my new adventure as a New Yorker or a Bostonian. I see a hand in the back somewhere.
This one might be a weird one.
It's okay.
Where do you guys stand on initiating handshake? Because I've gone into ones where I usually like to, when I meet with the person I'm going to be interviewing with, other people, I like to stick my hand out right away. It doesn't happen yet that someone comes. Ooh, but I know it's, increasingly now people are more like germ aware. Yeah. People don't like to shake hands. You think it's bad? Should you let the interviewer?
Oh, I jam my hand out there the minute I walk in the room.
Yeah. I would let if a person has reason to not shake your hand, I would let them be the one to say no to you. But and it could be for a number of reasons. It could be,
I've had people be like, well, I have a cold.
Yeah.
And so it's always tricky when you walk into a room with like 10 people too. Sometimes it can get awkward fast because everybody gets up to shake your hand at the same time. But I would, if you think handshaking is the thing, you should go for it. Yeah. And like you said, no one's going to not shake your hand. I don't think. I think you should do it. Wasn't that in one of the articles you read that that first 90 seconds that like the handshake thing is kind of still really important in a business setting?
Yep. And handling the handshake properly.
Yes.
Make it firm, it says.
Harvard.
I have a question about ads that emphasize specific and non-professional experience.
Yes.
I've been getting varied opinions lately on whether a good internship counts or not. And I really hope that if you really learned something, you did some significant work in your internship, that would at least somewhat count.
Sure. Yeah. I'm with you. What do you think?
I am too. I think it can be hard because there are, I'll speak from my previous experience at BPL, it was hard to use internship as experience. It was a union environment that had very strict language on what experience had to be in a professional capacity. I would still give someone a shot if they are showing me that they really gained some insight and some work experience on that internship, and I've got 3 other people that don't. You're going to be bumped up a little bit, and it may be it just sometimes may be the organization's bureaucracy that's preventing. I don't know if it would prevent hiring. I mean, when I was at BPL, I would consider people who.
Yeah. No, I would too. Absolutely, I would put that in your cover letter and say, just like we've been saying this whole time. I feel that I'm qualified with my 3 to 5 years of professional experience, 2 years as a part-time, circulation assistant, plus my 3-year, God forbid, my 3-year internship, or my 18-month internship puts me, solidly, and then talk a little bit about why, sell it. My internship was an intense learning experience with, one of the most renowned, reference chiefs in Eastern Massachusetts or something sell it. Absolutely. There's almost nothing, like we said at the beginning, there's no hard and fast rules here. I would say always err to the side of caution, unless, again, you're really determined to find, a space where it's all about, being a unique individual and doing things your own way. Yes?
I'm a little confused about some points you made. You mentioned that, if you had any questions from the job posting to contact that institution.
Yeah.
But at the same time, follow directions and it says don't contact us.
Yeah. Right. So I think if it specifically says don't contact us, you could go in and ask a librarian, but I wouldn't show up at the director's office door.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's, use good judgment in it. If you think, let's say you want to find out more about a children's outreach initiative that they talk about in the posting, you probably aren't going to call the director. You might go in on a Tuesday night or some night that might be a little slow and just chat with the children's librarian.
So that could count as your selfie?
I think so. Because it's, like I said, you're a patron just like anyone else, and you can go in and ask any question you want about a public service, and they don't need to know you're applying for a job, and you can just say, I'm just curious about this program, tell me about it. It's a great way to also hear how people talk about things going on. So I think using judgment of whether, I called the director when I wanted the budget information because I felt like that was the person who would know that information. If I were looking for circulation statistics, I might have called the circulation desk and said, can you tell me about your circulation? Which might have triggered someone to say, why do you want to know about our circulation? But, and I would be honest. I would say I'm applying for the job. Everyone knows the job's posted. I'm an applicant for the position. I'm just curious about it. And, you don't have to give any, if they say, well, what's your name? I'm not willing to give that out at this time. You don't have to tell anyone your personal information. But I just don't think there's any harm in when we say do your research, really doing your research and asking the questions that you are curious about. Or save them up, and those are your questions for the end of the interview. If you don't feel comfortable talking to someone beforehand, that's a good strategy as well.
But go on those super secret spy missions. I had a candidate come in to apply to be my teen librarian, and I said, I'm sure you've noticed that we've completely redone the teen room. And she said, oh, you have a teen room? I said, yes. Didn't you want to work in it? And she said, oh, I just hang out in the children's room all the time. I was like, okay.
So I have a question about meeting job qualifications and the percentage of qualifications that you need to meet before applying. I read a statistic somewhere that said something along the lines of men apply for 60% of jobs that meet 60% of qualifications will apply for something like 90%. What would you think?
I've never broken it down so mathematically. I really take it case by case. So all I'm looking for is that someone read my description and that they're demonstrating to me that they match it. So I don't go through a resume and say, well, this is only like 70%. She's only got 1 year and I wanted 2, so that's 50%. I look at it as a whole, and I look at it in terms of how you're demonstrating how you're going to help my organization. So if you don't have all the qualifications, I think that's fine. If you have them in some other job, just say that. But I've never drilled down to that level.
Are you kind of trying to get at the gender piece of that, though? That meant, yeah. So I can tell you a quick anecdote about myself. There was a job, a big job, here in the Boston area that I really wanted. And a colleague of mine, male colleague, wanted it also. And we worked at the same library at that time. And he was totally qualified, absolutely had everything on the sheet. And I was not. And when I heard that he was applying, I didn't apply. I thought, well, I'm never going to be able to compete with him. And, I just didn't have the confidence. And I didn't have the chutzpah, and I was too afraid. And he was offered the job, and he didn't take it. And when I ran into the director of that library years later, she said, I would have hired you in a heartbeat. So I missed a huge opportunity early in my career because I didn't do what the statistic you read said a man would do and say, I don't care, I want that job. I'm going to apply for it. And that's sort of what we were getting at earlier about if you don't quite have it. Like I said, I've interviewed people that don't have MLSs for MLS jobs because they've done such a spectacular job of selling themselves in every other regard. So I think if you see something that you want and you really think you can sell it, you should have total confidence in yourself that you can do that, and they'll either take you or they won't. And don't forget, if you don't get the interview, you get the interview and then you don't get the job, you get the job and it doesn't work out, these are all learning experiences for how you're going to move forward in your career forever. Sometimes it feels like death, but none of it is. It's just a job, and you're learning all the way. So
I saw a hand over here first, and then we'll go over here.
I guess my question was more for organizational culture.
Yeah.
I didn't exactly apply for a job at a nearby college, but I sent them my resume twice, and I think it was back in August or September. They called me 3 times in 2 days, asking me to schedule an interview. But when I actually had the interview, I kind of got the feeling that they had already picked someone. And I just had a feeling I wasn't getting what they wanted, and they were micromanaging. So I chalked it up to just the experience of maybe this wasn't the right fit, but I wasn't really sure how I should approach it, if it was more of, was I not prepared, or did they just already choose someone? How do I interpret that? Or how have you anything in your experience that you've had?
Well, organizational culture is incredibly difficult to change. So I've always said, unless I go to an interview and someone says, we want to hire you to change our culture, which I would, okay, but you're almost never going to change it. So if you're getting a bad vibe in an interview, I say go with your gut. When I was in my recent job search, I was interviewing at another library, and I told Sarah this story, and she was like, oh my God. I was in the interview, it had a panel of 12 people, and I was getting that same vibe. I'm like, something's not right here. And then I was asked a question by one of the trustees, and another trustee jumped in, and the guy went, I didn't ask you, I asked her. And I got this vibe of, okay, so this is not going to be
for me
a good no. So I thought it was maybe I'm not coming across well, but I think there was some dynamics going on in the room that were beyond me, and it just said to me, that's not the place I want to work. So I actually withdrew the next day from the process, because I just thought, I don't want to waste anyone's time. I didn't get a good feeling. And they could have, there's another option that they could have been calling you in to see if you would fit with their culture, and you got the right vibe that maybe you wouldn't. And
the funny thing is, I think I did what you said not to do earlier was the name dropping, because my cousin works there. I thought they knew him. So
it's tough. You just don't know.
Because I asked about if there was opportunity for advancement, and then they mentioned his position. But I know him; he's my cousin. It's like, is that a good thing, a bad thing?
Did you sense a quietness?
So
you don't.
Just puts everyone in a really awkward position.
I was interviewing with the director and the reference librarian, and I was interviewing here for a position under the reference librarian. But the director was micromanaging.
You know best.
And I think,
you know your
Christine and I were having coffee before this, and said, she told me a little story that I think would apply here, that in one interview, you're saying that you started to get a weird vibe in the room, and you sort of stopped yourself and said, I'll let you tell your
I
story.
did. I was asked to present about the future of libraries. So I thought, future of libraries, I'm going to bring the Aspen report, I'm going to talk all about future of libraries. And I noticed the people in front of me they put their pens down, and they sort of sat back, and they were giving me weird looks. And so I said, I'm going to stop here. I sense that I'm not connecting with you, or I'm not answering your question. And the guy said, I was curious about programs. Like, what programs are you going to offer? So I had this grand idea that he wanted me to talk about the future of libraries, but what he really meant was, tell me what programs you would do in the future. So there was, I was so taken aback that it just sort of came out like, I need to stop because I can tell you guys aren't on the same page with me. And it turned out fine. Then we had a great conversation about programs, but I wasn't prepared for that conversation, so it was awkward. But I think it's always best to just be honest. If you're sensing something, you can be like, am I answering your question? Did I get that?
So I guess my question kind of ends that off. We all have bad interviews, or we have those interviews where we feel as if we don't want to be there either. Is there anything that you think we should take away from those experiences, or it's halfway through, what should we start trying to figure out to help us further?
Well, I guess you could play it a couple different ways. You could just get through the interview, use it as experience, thank them for their time and see what happens, which I think is always a good thing to do. I mean, you want that experience. You want to actually probably have that feeling of not feeling a connection so that you know that. The other thing, I forgot to mention this earlier, but if you've got only a short amount of time, you can answer the questions pretty quickly and shortly if you're not feeling it, and then get through the don't drag the interview out by giving a 45-minute response when it could be done in 2 minutes. Sort of get through it. But I think I don't know if I would ever stop an interview and say, this is
so like that goes back to the whole, like, the library world is small and you never really know who's sitting across the table from you. So I think we share a sort of mentor who's terrific, and she's like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's like, learn, leave that interview, meet a friend for a drink, email a mentor, break it down, tear it apart, look at the pieces. What was wrong there? What happened? Was it me? Was it them? Was it both? Was it neither? Was it a full moon? Like, it can be anything. You laugh. Wait till you've worked in public libraries for a while.
The full moon is real.
The full moon is, the struggle is real. So, dissect that. Figure it out. What went wrong? Why didn't it work? Yeah. What could I have done to make it work? And if you can't think of anything, that's okay too. But you'd be surprised by taking that extra time after to break it down with a friend or a mentor or boss or professor. The next time it starts to go sideways, that's going to be something you already know how to do.
I think there was another hand over here, or
anybody? No?
Any other? I don't know how much time we have.
So maybe one last question.
One last. Okay.
So my question is, if for some reason you had to leave a job before you find another job for personal reasons, and then you're at the interview or you're writing your cover letter, did you mention that, or were you going to ask it? And when they ask it, how did you?
I think this sort of falls under what I said before about the moving question. Is there are a lot of questions that we aren't legally allowed to ask. So if you are comfortable filling in any kind of situation on your paperwork that is going to raise a question, you should try to do that, I think, in your cover letter. I stayed home with my kids for 5 years, and I figured I better just put that in there, because otherwise it was just going to look like, I left New York 2 months after September 11th and didn't work again until 2005. So I put that in there, and then under volunteer activities, I put that I was the president of my parent-run cooperative nursery school, and the chair of the fundraising committee for 2 years, and the vice president for a year. So I was keeping my management skills up. I was applying my library work elsewhere for the benefit of the community. I was obviously staying home with my children, and then they didn't have to be like, I wonder what happened to her. Like, I wonder where she was. Could she not get a job? I left my investment banking job. I asked for a layoff so that we could move and I could have another kid. Now, I didn't want to put all of that stuff in my cover letter because that would be weird. But I could say, I had children and I stayed home with them for a while after relocating from New York. And now it's time for me to go back into the workforce.
So like if I wasn't working but I had an internship, I can then...
Sure, absolutely. You can keep it as simple as possible without getting into the details of your personal life. But anything that you are comfortable and able to offer that fills in those gaps leaves, people just, how people are, they speculate like the worst, right? So it's like anything you could sort of give them to keep them on the straight and narrows.
And if you're going
to your advantage
through your resume and these are 3 things they're going to pop out. These are things you better just practice your answer.
Yeah.
You already know that that's going to be one they may ask about, so just have an answer ready. And I always say this too, I probably should have mentioned it. If you get asked a question you don't know the answer to, just have 3 or 4 canned things in your mind that you're just, a politician does this all the time. Do you support building a wall? Blah, blah, blah. They talk about something else.
Yeah.
So that's okay to do. Have 3 or 4 things that you will sell, and maybe that's what you do when you know that there's going to be a question about your resume. Have it ready.
And it's okay to say I don't know. I would rather have you say I don't know, I don't have any experience with that, but I'd be interested to learn, than have to sit and listen to like some 10-minute meandering like dance that has nothing to do with the question.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you. I have some jobs available in Brookline. And Faruka has jobs at Boston. And I have their library assistant jobs, but they're available immediately.
I'm sorry I don't have any jobs.
Christine didn't come with jobs.
We're all very happy about it.